compito difficile, siamo tutti stanchi. E poi mancano.
It's a difficult task. We're all tired, and there aren't the strongest opposers to this concept. What is the most common factor? It's something that we've always called the principle of Similia, and it's the reversal of the interaction of a substance with the organism. The same substance that at high doses produces the illness, at infinitesimally small doses it provides a cure. This is what we've seen with Apis mellifica. The same substance gives inflammation. At low doses it reduces the inflammation, but this is a phenomenon we've seen in the organism, and we've seen that it corresponds to a cellular mechanism in a suppression exerted by small doses, 7CH, 3CH of Apis mellifica, on genes that produce the inflammatory substance, interleukins and phospholipase. So we've reached this point, and we see techniques at the cell level. We see what we see as an in vivo phenomenon, at least in this example, and what has always been described from the beginning of the tale. What is homeopathy if not an input that stimulates, encourages self-recovery or biological self-repair using substances according to our method in agreement with the Similia principle? We have always known that the Ayurvedic medicine, the Hippocratic school, Helleborgism phenomenon, illness develops through the simile and illness healed through the implementation of and Hellebor in decoction cures diarrhea. And we've heard Paracelsus, who said it's only the dose that produces poison. The observations in by Sturck, if stramonium makes people who are not insane fall ill, why can it not be possible to determine if stramonium leads to mental well-being for those who have mental disorders? And so Hahnemann's observations, low doses of toxicants may have beneficial effects, whereas high doses have profoundly different effects. Then we have Schultz. His first work, he was the first to describe hormesis, although the name hormesis was given in the 1900s. Drug effects are qualitatively different according to the dose. So the Arndt-Schultz law wasn't successful. Schultz was a biologist and Arndt was also a homeopath. It was countered strongly over the years, and those who were in favor of Schultz, our friend Calabrese, who even had to renounce his Nobel Prize. He didn't get the Nobel Prize because he supported studies done by Arnold Schultz. And Arnold Schultz, he was an American homeopath who worked at the beginning of the 80s, thanks to Paolo Bellavite, who gave us his book entitled The Principle of Similia in Medicine, Lynn Boyd, who worked at the beginning of the century in America, doing what the Dolores group now does, that is studying homeopathic medicine in small doses, that is with trials on rabbits. This great gentleman who took everything over, and he did a historical action, although Calabrese took over the tools, and he took with him all the work that Schultz had done and had helped him, and it was finalized to this, that is, studying not only the actions of high doses of substances, but also that of small doses of substances. Then there were two methods, therefore, since antiquity, to approach for reaching human health, that of the method of the contraries and that of the Similia, and the inhibiting effect and the stimulatory effect. And I would use Boyd's words, which I like very much. It was unlucky that two equally valid chemical pharmacological research methods were seen as mutually exclusive. While and this, the conventional pharmacology one, when they could well complement each other. This is the sense of what we are saying, that is, reuniting the two pharmacologies, that of the high and that of the low doses. Between hormesis and homeopathy, it really was contrasted love, because homeopaths did not realize that 15 years ago, Van Wyck and Wien, Vegan had told us something important. They'd shown us the action of small doses of toxicants like lead and arsenic and cadmium on mammalian cells, and the capacity, the toxic action that these small quantities had, and the ability to stimulate a self-defense system. And Wyck and Vegan's studies led us to 2006, and very little has been said about these concepts, about these hormesis homeopathy connection, until we held a seminar, and we were not popular. There was a seminar in Florence with Eduardo Calabrese, and this was called Challenging the Dose-Response Dogma. This was the dogma of Clark and pharmacology, conventional pharmacology. It went even worse when in the same year, Day and Bernardini tried to propose that hormesis could provide a central concept for homeopathy development. That is, the world of the homeopaths really fought against them. Our friend Bedbaum, who was here earlier and he had to leave for Tel Aviv, he was the first to say there was no link, there could be no link between hormesis and homeopathy. What had they seen? What had Van Wyck and Vegan seen in the past? They'd seen that cells react to these substances, and that application of a stimulus in microdoses gave a resistance reaction, reactivation of substances, proteins, Darwinian proteins such as the head shock protein, that stimulated resistance of the cell towards stronger stimuli. They had seen these things without dynamization, only in dilution, and they'd seen that this activation took place through heterologous stimulus, not only homologous stimuli. This is the experimental protocol. But they'd seen that the activation of these proteins was much less when the cell applies it. When you apply a heterologous approach, that is a different substance from the one that intoxicates, and it's much greater than when you apply a homologous stimulus. So if I give cadmium to the cell and small doses of cadmium, there's a maximum activation of the mechanisms of cell response in sense of self-repair. So I ask the homeopaths, it's not just homeopaths here, what is the difference between these concepts and the ones that we're used to call the principle of Similia? There's no difference. The same substance that certain doses gives you an ease in infinitesimal doses, it gives you the cure. So Van Wyck and Vegan had given these provings or symptom pictures at the cellular level. So a cell that gives a photograph of the symptoms in the cellular literature of what is happening. That is, the production of proteins in the stress, activation stress, and in response to microdoses of the same intoxicating agent. I'm fully in agreement with this point of view. I believe that the principle of Similia at the cellular level is exactly this. That is, that there's a possibility of being able to see how certain measurable proteins respond to a stimulus in small doses. But how much time have I got? Another problem existed, that is that of the dose. There still is a problem of the lower dose and the ultra-low dose, and the molecular and ultramolecular. In fact, John Ives had to say, even if the homeopaths talk about ultra-low, there are homeopathic doses in low doses. Of course there are. And there are plenty of them, plenty of low-dose homeopathic doses, the 7CH, of 9CH that we were shown. These are doses that are able to produce at a cellular level huge, enormous reactions. So we should not just get stuck with the ultra-low. But looking at the ultra-low, John Ives has shown us studies, and there are studies on arsenic in 200C which activate the same sort of self-reparatory reaction in these cells. If we want to talk about silicon, more in general, I think we can say that this self-repairing mechanism is observed within the cells in response to molecular dilutions and ultramolecular doses. And moreover, these studies that when we homeopaths applauded these as great trials in homeopathy, they really were studies that we can certainly consider to be Hormesis studies, and the Daughter-Repuich group that demonstrated that small doses of aspirin had a thrombotic effect, whereas aspirin has a thrombophilic effect. But in subsequent studies, we see that aspirin at 15C has a thrombotic effect, whereas when I say 15C, I'm talking about an ultra-low dose. So when I talk about low dose and ultra-low dose, I'm talking about cellular systems, the same language, and so this is in fact the opposite. So it's a reversal. So I ask you the same question: where is the difference in this principle of Similia and Hormesis? Because I do not see it. This is the curve that we presented in 2006, and Andrea Day proposed extending the curve of the approach to the drug, to the receptor, including this new sector, that the world of the lower dose, which was emerging in conventional pharmacology. Calabresi talked about historical antipathies. It's not a very wonderful article, talking about historical blunders, how toxicology got the dose-response relationship half right. And historical antipathies did originate, and I'd like to refer to this concept to talk about other historical antipathies which are equally unpresent in our community. That is the world of homeopaths against Hormesis. Once we've got an interpretation, once we've got a possibility through an exchange with the international community in trying to start off towards research, what do? We just throw it away because, as Oberbaum says, there are cardinal differences between Hormesis and homeopathy. The homeopathy is highly specific. There's Similia, but if we see that these substances in small doses interact at several levels, at the cellular and organ level, are we sure that we can speak today only in these terms of specificity of homeopathy? Between the cardinal differences, Oberbaum said the ultra-low dose, the high dilution. We've seen that these mechanisms happen also in low dose, and we don't know now if the use of dynamization, these studies were done with non-dynamized doses. We don't know if it's so useful for codifying homeopathy. We do not know. I'm not saying it's necessary or that it's not necessary. I'm saying that at the present day we do not know. And also Paolo Bellavite said that hormesis is not homeopathy, nor does it provide the explanation for it. But in the light of these concepts and what we see happening inside the cells and what John Ives has told us and Edward Calabrese of what happens when an Apis 7CH, I ask, what is homeopathy today? What is it? Because this is a fundamental question, I think. Or isn't it? Bellavite said again, but there can be various points of contact. I invited Bellavite today for future research together. Well, good, I think. Will I manage in 3 minutes? I think I will. Well, I can manage. I'm at the end and I'll finish. We have to study the effects of homeopathic medicines on cells, and this irrespective of the homeopathic method. Studying the effect of the homeopathic remedy on the cells. And I ask the homeopath, can we call this homeopathy? If this can be called homeopathy, then a sector of research in a new scenario opens up to explain the action of homeopathic remedies on cells by the principle of Similia and Hormesis. But if this is not homeopathy, and there's Peter Fisher in the room who will no doubt speak, then we must study homeopathic medicines irrespective of the method, the homeopathic method, and the container, in a container which is very simply called pharmacology of microdoses. For me, any solution is fine, and the community of homeopaths internationally will wish to speak. The important thing is not to abandon this type of study because they are extremely important. And I'd like to say just one last thing about our work in the sector. In the dance of the genes, that's what I call it, the dance of the genes. Let me just embroider. Genes work differently in response to the same substance when the concentration of the substance varies. That is, the 3CH moves different groups of genes than what copper does in 5CH. I find this extraordinary. The same substance, according to how much it's diluted, it moves populations of cells, and the concentration of the substance changes. So in conclusion, I think that the key, hormesis is a key to interpret the effects triggered by low-dose substances in living systems. I think that homeopathic drugs, or at least low-dose ones, can be considered even only a low dose of a substance which interacts with the organism. And I think that these small doses of homeopathic drugs can be included in low-dose pharmacology and studied in this context. And I believe that homeopathy may one day in the future be part of the low-dose pharmacology. And I also think that further research is necessary to explain the effects triggered by ultra-low dose drugs. And I think now we can start arguing. Thank you.